Hi, this is Scott Wilkinson, host of Home Theater Geeks. In episode 142, I chat with home theater journalists Jeff Morrison, Barb Gonzalez, and Robert Silva about the audio and video developments of 2012. Coming up next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Home Theater Geeks is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Home Theater Geeks with Scott Wilkinson for December 31st, 2012. Episode 142. That was the year that was. This episode of Home Theater Geeks is brought to you by Netflix. Watch thousands of TV episodes and movies on your PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, or TV instantly. All streamed directly to you, saving you time, money, and hassle. For your free 30-day trial, go to netflix.com/twit. Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here, the Home Theater Geek. This week, we are going to be talking about the year that was, audio video in 2012, and I've got an esteemed panel of journalists to join me and talk about that. First, we have Jeff Morrison, who writes for CNET, Sound and Vision, and a variety of other outlets. Hey, Jeff, welcome back to the show.
Hey, good to be here, Scott.
Thanks so much. We also have Barb Gonzalez, another return guest, who writes for Home Theater and hometheater.com and a variety of other outlets as well. Hey, Barb, welcome back.
Hi, Scott. I write for Tech Go Strong. That's the other one you were forgetting.
Ah, very good. Thank you so much. I don't want to forget that. And finally, a new guest on the show, Robert Silva, is known as the Home Theater Guide on About.com at hometheater.about.com. Hey, Robert, welcome.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for inviting me. Glad to be here.
I'm sure glad all three of you are here because we got a lot of ground to cover in the next hour or so. We're going to talk about what happened. What the heck happened last year? It's gone already. I can't believe that 2012 is already gone. So let's get into it. But first, I want to make sure everybody knows that who's watching live or in the chat room. You can watch live, of course, and I hope you do at live.twit.tv, and certainly I hope you join the chat room at irc.twit.tv, where you can post questions for any of my guests, and I will pass along as many as I can. Okay, so did this year seem to pass as fast for you guys as it did for me? Jeff, is it getting faster every year? Weren't we just at CES?
Yeah, it sure seems like it. Disappointingly so.
Yeah. Barb, I mean, I guess it's because I've heard it called the Denui effect, which is as we age, our metabolism slows down, our inner clock slows down, but the clock on the wall just keeps going at the same rate. So it looks to us like it's going faster.
Is it sort of like being in space or something?
Yeah, right. It's a relativistic effect. There you go. Exactly. Robert, how has your year been?
Oh, it's gone by really quick. It just seems like I was at CES a few months ago.
I know.
And but a lot has happened in this past year, both good and bad, in the consumer electronics and home theater area. So
it absolutely has. So why don't you start us off? Give us your initial hits on what were the most important things that happened in this year.
Well, on the positive side, 4K. Obviously, I did when I saw the prototypes or the pre-production models at CES this past year, like the LG, I didn't expect it to come on the market already this year, although they kept saying it was coming. I was expecting OLED to be out first, and that's, to me, my biggest disappointment of the year is the fact that it's been 5 or 6 years I've been seeing OLED demonstrated, and it's still not here yet. And to me, that was a big disappointment.
You know, that's a really good point because we've been hearing about OLED, and we saw it at CES this year, the beginning of this year, from Samsung and LG, and they were saying, "Oh, absolutely, it's going to be out before the end of the year." Blah blah blah. But instead, what we see are 4K flat panels coming out instead. It's quite interesting. Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, I kind of disagree. I mean, I've written about 4K a lot, and I I agree that it's interesting that it is here, but I find so little use for 4K. I would have much rather have seen OLED.
I disagree.
Okay.
Okay, well, I guess maybe I should explain it that
let Jeff finish his thought, and then Barb, you can jump in here.
Yeah, in 84 inches, which is the size right now, and larger for like projectors and things like that. Yeah, 4K is great, and in the theater, 4K is awesome. But inevitably, we're going to see smaller and smaller 4K TVs, and there's just no use for it. Most people sit 10 feet from their TVs, and at 50 inches, you can't even tell the difference between 1080p and 720p. So 4K is just ridiculous. Like, there's no need for it. Like, you're better off with something like OLED, where you have a higher contrast ratio. The image is better for no matter what the resolution is. So I don't know. I find 4K to be so ridiculous. I mean, there's no need for it for the size of TVs that most people buy and will conceivably buy for the near future.
Yeah. Barb, you had a response?
Yeah, I actually do. I don't think that 4K is about having 4K. I think it's really more about getting full 1080p in 3D.
Very
Passive
good
3D,
point. And passive 3D specifically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that's where
that's
the
great.
4K comes in.
Yeah, I agree with you totally on that. Yeah, that's great. That is absolutely the best use for 4K right now, anyway.
Yeah, I also agree. And the other issue with 4K that Sony actually addressed in a way that I didn't necessarily expect is content. That you might have a 4K display, and even if it's large enough to make a difference as to how far away you're sitting, if it's a big enough screen, you'll be able to see the pixels in 1080p, but not in 4K. Where's the content? Until Sony introduced their server at this big launch event that I was able to go to, most of these TVs were just up-converting 1080p if they weren't showing 3D. And, up-converted 1080p is not that exciting to me, certainly, but Sony made the announcement at their event that when you buy their $25,000 84-inch flat panel, it's going to come with a 4K media server loaded with 4K movies. And every once in a while, they didn't say how often, they are going to send you a Blu-ray data disc, not a video disc, but a data disc that on which will be more 4K content that you load onto your server. And so they have at least addressed to some degree the issue of, well, okay, if we've got a large enough 4K panel, where is the 4K content going to come from?
Right, and they're the only company that would really be able to do that, right? I mean, they
right, because they have a movie studio.
Movie studio, right? So that's one of the few times recent memory where Sony has actually been able to do something ahead of the curve, really, and say, even though they're presumably not actually making that panel, they are able to say, well, here's all the content. We can do that. Here it is.
Right. Robert, you've seen 4K, I'm sure.
Yes.
Actual 4K content. Sitting at a
well, yes and no on the 4K content. I actually saw the Sony 84-inch in a Sony store, so I wanted to see. It was interesting to see how the staff was presenting it and everything. And what was really odd was, of course, it was just when it just first came in, it first put on display, is that they were showing still images in 4K. But they were showing up converted 1080p 3D on the set at that time, and then they said, "Well, as it gets closer to Christmas, we're going to have like a full 4K demo going." And it's like, and I'm saying to myself, "Well, why not now?"
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that actually is something that I hear an awful lot from readers and listeners of this show is, 4K, who cares? Japan's already going to 8K. Why don't we just wait for 8K? Now, Jeff, your point about that, I'm sure, would be, well, you'd better have a ginormous screen if that's going to make any difference.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like I said, 4K, even at 84 inches, it's going to be tough to be able to tell at 10 feet between a 4K and a 1080p TV. So to go 8, that's the problem. I've been reading a lot of people who are very pro 4K saying, "Oh, but I saw it in a show and it looked amazing." It's like, well, yeah, but you were standing next to the television. Like people aren't sitting that close. And that's I think the part that's lost on a lot of that is that the vast majority of people don't buy 84-inch televisions or 80 or 70 or even 60, and they sit 10 feet away. So for most people, and that's I don't know. Like I said, it's for most people it seems extravagant, I guess would be the nicest way of saying it.
Yeah. The other application that they showed at this event that I thought was interesting was they used the 3D capability, but not in 3D. They used it in a gaming context.
That's cool.
Where the glasses show you wore one pair of glasses that didn't have oppositely polarized lenses, but the same.
Yeah.
And so wearing glasses A, you saw one thing. And if you were wearing glasses B, you saw a different thing. So each player had their own perspective on the game without seeing the other players.
Right. You can actually do that with, I believe it's LG's passive TVs right now. But as Barb said, it's the advantage with 4K is that now you can do that with greater than 1080p resolution with a 4K TV. Whereas with any modern or current 1080p passive television, it's all half resolution.
Right, exactly. Now, Barb, you saw. I think you and I both saw at Toshiba's first attempt at this 3D on a 4K display, seeing full 1080p in the passive glasses at CES last year.
Right. And I mean, I don't think it ever came out. Did you see it?
I don't think so either.
Out?
No,
I don't think it did. So
but they were pointing in the right direction.
Features. Yeah. So everything, they make it sound like they're going to jump on everything and that it's going to come out this year, but then it just sort of ekes out in little pieces.
Now, does anybody?
And then suddenly you go, "Wow, how did we get here?"
Yeah. Now, do any of you have any notion of why we have yet to see an OLED TV of the 55-inch variety, I think, which LG and Samsung both promised us last CES. I haven't seen one in a store yet.
I keep hearing that it's production issues, with the materials, the actual substrates and things like that they're using in the panels and everything.
Yeah, it's all about the yields.
I think that they just have continued problems with yields.
Has anybody seen an LG TV this year? A new one come out here in the States? Because the only one I kept hearing about are the ones in Japan.
That's a good question. I haven't seen any. Jeff, have you?
Can't remember what I've reviewed this year. I don't think so. I mean, they had. I've reviewed.
Yeah, your brain's a FIFO buffer like mine.
Yeah. As soon as it leaves, it's out of the brain. I don't think I actually reviewed any this year, but I mean, they had new ones out. CNET reviewed a few. I think they had a local dimming set that was okay. I mean, there are only 3 local dimming LED LCDs on the market, and it was one of them. I think it was number 3 out of the 3.
Yeah, the others are Sony and
Elite by Sharp.
Oh, Sharp, of course.
Yeah, which is not new. It came out last year sometime.
Right. Robert, have you seen any? Have you seen any 2012 LG flat panels?
No, not really. Just what I saw at CES this past year, and but I haven't seen anything really new from LG as far as that goes.
Mm-hmm.
See, there's a point to why I said that too, Scott.
Oh, what's that?
Well, that since I always do all of the streaming stuff. One of the things that they showed at the show was the kind of wand remote and being able to dictate your Facebook statuses and all that kind of stuff.
Voice recognition and voice to speech, voice to text kind of stuff.
Yeah, voice to text and dictation and that kind of stuff. And it never came out in the States.
And
well, they did introduce. Oh,
sorry. Go ahead, Robert.
I was going to say LG did introduce 2 Google TVs.
But it never came out in the States.
No, they actually were on Black Friday ads.
Really?
Huh. Yeah.
Okay.
I think there's a 55 and a 47. I think it's like the G2 47 G2 and the 55 G2. Check on their website. I haven't seen them myself, but I'm curious to see how their Google TV interface.
Well, I know that I know that Barb has a lot of experience with Google TV.
Yeah,
and I'm going to ask her about that in just a second. But before I do, I did want to mention that Compter in the chat room is asking about projectors that simulate 4K from JVC, which I guess aren't new this year. But they do, in fact, do that in a situation, in a technology they call E-shift.
Yeah. Although the way they did it this year is different from how they did it last year, or that's what they're claiming. Yeah, last year I guess it was I think they said last year was an optical method, and this year was something else, but they wouldn't say what. But they said it was different. What I found for I tested the model last year, and it worked. I mean, it made the pixels smaller, but it wasn't a huge increase. I mean, the scaling wasn't enough that it really looked any better than like a DLP running the same thing. And that was, I think the bigger problem is that LCOS has motion resolution problems, just like any liquid crystal device. And it doesn't look as detailed with motion as a DLP at, in this case, a quarter of the resolution. But it was still, the bigger problem with that JVC last year was that whatever method they were using seemed to have reduced the contrast ratio slightly. Because I also reviewed the lower model that didn't have that E-shift in it, and the contrast ratio was significantly better.
That's the DLA X30, I think?
Last year's was the 30, yeah. And I actually just finished the review of the 35, the new one for this year, which is their $3,500 model, and it is unbelievably good. I mean, one of the best contrast ratios I've ever measured. Beautiful, beautiful TV or projector.
Yeah. Wow. Let's see, Robert. What have you reviewed this year that struck you as particularly good?
A couple of things actually. I really liked the Epson, the 510E series projector. I know they have the 520E out now, but in fact, that's the one that's sitting up behind me there is the 520. But the 510E I thought was really interesting because it came with wireless HDMI transmitter that allowed you to plug in your source across the room and full 1080p to the projector. And I thought that was very convenient, worked really well, and in 3D.
Wow.
And,
what technology did that use? I mean, there are a couple of wireless.
I believe it's WHDI. I'll have to double check because I don't have my review of him, but I think it was
whatever
WHDI.
One is 5 gigahertz. I think it's the 5 gigahertz one.
Yeah.
Okay, that's WHDI. That's the one by Amimon. Is the company that made
I actually just finished my review. I did all three of the $3,500 projectors. I did the Epson, the JVC, and the Sony. And the Epson 5020E is one of the brightest displays of any type I've ever reviewed. On my 102-inch screen, I was getting 60 foot Lamberts.
Oh, man.
Man.
I mean, that's
unbelievable. But just for everybody's sake, the standard for a projector is 16.
Yeah.
And you were getting 60.
You aren't going to have any.
You're
not going to have any
shrink
3D
the size of the image down to about a 60-inch display sized, you would be getting somewhere around 150 foot Lamberts.
Oh man! And Robert, you made a good point that you probably don't have any trouble with 3D brightness on a projector like that.
No, I don't think so. You shouldn't. No, that sounds great. Jeez.
Let's see, Barb. We were talking about Google TV, and I wanted to make sure we get plenty of information from you. You've reviewed a couple of Google TV products this year, at least.
Yep. Well, the two main standalones, which is the Sony and the Vizio CoStar. And so it seems what I would say about Google TV in 2012 is that it has been reborn and it is a viable choice for media streaming.
Yes, certainly in the very beginning when it first was introduced, we all, I think, were relatively underwhelmed, shall we say. And it kind of almost went away, and then it seems to have resurrected itself. And you think now it's a viable way to access online content. Absolutely.
They have an app called PlayPoint that will do DLNA. There's actually an app where that has AirPlay, so you can actually stream from your iPad or iPhone to it. There's Play 2s for so you can take from your Android devices. Then there's also CBS.com. You can get that on their web browser now. So there is a lot of
which
more
you
content
weren't able
than
to
there had
before.
been. Right. The lone holdout is kind of Hulu. I think they're still working on that, but from the reps that I've talked to about it and such, it is coming. They say that Hulu is coming, but the quality of the picture is much better. And I think that we talked about this before. I just love their TV and movie app that lets you rate your favorite TV shows and movies. And then we'll look at, when you have it hooked up to your cable or satellite box, we'll let you know what is on right now. And we'll show you the shows that are most like the stuff that you like to watch. So when I want to watch TV, I just go into the TV and movies app and boom, it tells me stuff. And it's always something that I want to watch. So it's pretty cool.
That's very cool. I was very interested. I read both your CoStar and the Sony, I've forgotten the model number of it, Google TV standalone box. And I was interested that you found a fairly substantial difference in picture quality between the two.
Well, actually, that's kind of gone down a little bit.
Really?
There were issues with the CoStar when it first came out. That I think there was some HDMI issues as well as just a number of performance issues with it. And it was $99, so it was pretty cool. But they had a bunch of updates, and the recent update, the problems that I was having with like the standard definition upscaling and things like that, most of that all went away, and it was really responsive, and the difference in quality is much more, you have to be really tweaky to see it. So they came through, and it was just a firmware update. They made it work.
So Jeff, have you done much with Google TV?
Yeah, I reviewed the CoStar as well, and one of the Sony, I think the TV that had it built in, and yeah, like you were saying, like it doesn't live up to the promise, but if you just treat it as kind of another way to do media streaming, it's not bad. I mean, it's got Amazon Instant Video, the movie TV app, like Barb was saying, is great. So it's a viable alternative to a Roku or an Apple TV. I don't know if they each kind of offer they each have their pros and cons, but I enjoyed it. It worked fine for me, and for $100, I don't see why you wouldn't want to get at least one of those things.
Yeah,
Robert,
I reviewed the CoStar as well, and I found it. I'm not sold on Google TV, but I did find the CoStar a much better interface and everything than the previous Sony Blu-ray disc player that I reviewed last year that had Google TV built in.
What was improved in the user interface?
Well, it just seemed to be easier to organize everything. The menus were visually more appealing, and that was basically it for me. It was just easier to go through everything.
I agree with Robert too. Yeah.
One of the things that Google TV certainly promised was the aggregation of different sources, online, broadcast, satellite, cable, into one user interface. And if you looked for, say, The Terminator or True Lies, which we were talking about before the show started, it would show you where it was available, no matter what the provider or the means of transmission. Is that still true? Is it any better in that regard than it was?
It does do that, and it is much better. Yep.
Better, yeah.
Yeah.
Not perfect.
Well, it is not perfect. I agree with that, but I was pretty amazed at the fact that it could even find movies that were on some of my NAS drives and such on my home network, my network attack storage drives. And so it could find it there, it could find it online, and it would tell me where I could rent it as well. And I think that's also in that TV movies app. I think it's that same app that does that search.
I guess my complaint about Google TV in general and what the promise of it would be is I want to be able to, whatever the show is that I'm searching for, it should be able to find it. And they don't have the license agreements to be able to find it in every single way. So if I can go on the web and through the AT&T Uverse website see what's on my DVR, then the Google TV should be able to do the same thing once I log in, and it doesn't do that. So if you've recorded something on your DVR, the Google TV doesn't know that it's there. And I think that one step, I think, is rather significant in the overall usability of it. Like I said, I still like it, and it's much better than it was when it started. But that next step of this thing being a central hub for knowing where all the content is, it's still not there yet. And it could be. Like the technology is there for it to be, but it's not.
I bet it will be by next year. I bet it will be.
I hope so.
Especially if you have something, if you have Dish, it will. They have kind of a better way of doing it. You know, looking onto the DVRs and the Dish
So that almost
programming
sets
and
the
such.
precedent, though. That sets the precedent that it is possible for them. They know that it's possible. So with all of this stuff being connected to at least your provider, they're going to know what it is. I imagine even with the cable boxes and stuff, there's still some sort of two-way there that it knows what it is. That well, maybe not with cable boxes, but it's certainly with the Uverse. There's a two-way communication that it knows what's on my box, which is creepy, but that's the way it is. And so if that knowledge is there, then the AT&T, Uverse, and Verizon, and other ways, similar, two-way communications like that, Google TV needs to be able to get that license done somehow to at least be able to say, yes, here's a HTML file of what's on that computer, that hard drive right now.
Darkroom08 in the chat room is asking, is there a Google TV USB stick?
Oh, there is, and I'm going to review it this month, but I can't remember the name of it. I'd have to go climb over there to see the name of it.
Oh, okay. So there is one.
Yes.
Because we do know that there's a Roku stick.
I reviewed that. It's kind of neat.
Is it? It uses the MHL, which is
correct.
Mobile. What is it? Mobile high definition link. So it's sort of HDMI, but with a slightly different connector. Is that right?
It doesn't have to be a different connector. The way I describe it is that it's HDMI with extra power because it can power the devices. I mean, HDMI has power on it anyway, but not enough generally to power most equipment. So this has enough. It's mobile. It's for mobile, but there's enough power on that connection to run certain things, and this little Roku device is one of them. And the experience is great. I reviewed the 3M projector, the streaming projector, which is this little $300 projector that's maybe this big, and it's DLP LED, and it's got this $100 Roku stick in it. So you could take this thing. It's got a battery in it. You just put it down on a table, and as long as you have Wi-Fi, you can stream whatever you want from Netflix or Amazon or whatever. I mean, it's really cool. It's not very bright, but it's very, very cool.
Yeah.
Now, is the stick already out, Jeff?
I believe so. I mean, it's in that device. I think I checked the website. That you can buy it through Roku, I think. I looked at that right now, but I'm pretty sure it's out, yeah.
Lawn Dog in the chat room is asking, and I'll pose this to all of the panelists here. What products or inventions or technologies that were announced or came out this year were failures, and why? Robert, you got any thoughts on that?
Oh, I guess I could go back to OLED, but so far until
it's a failure only in that it hasn't come out
yet. It's not here yet. Right. Yeah, that's true. Oh boy, that is a good one. I don't know of anything. People keep sounding the death knell for 3D, but I don't think 3D has actually failed. It's just cruising slowly.
It's a very good point, though, that you make, that a lot of people are saying death to 3D. And I think I've seen companies that make TVs and displays sort of touting it less And yet it's there. It's on their products, becoming almost as I thought it would, just another feature that you buy that comes with the TV when you get a certain after you get beyond a certain price point. You know that you're just going to get 3D, and whether or not you use it, it sort of doesn't matter. Barb, what about you? Anything you have sort of seen that sort of didn't work, fell on its face one way or another?
It's whatever hasn't come out yet. I think it's going to be better next year. So one of the promises was second screen was a huge promise. You have a tablet. I heard something there.
I was agreeing, going, ooh, yeah, that's right.
So it sounded a little bit like a monkey. So anyway, there was like tablets and the TV EE was supposed to come out as soon as the Wii U launched. So
that's right. That's the Nintendo.
The Nintendo Wii U. The whole second screen experience so far is kind of Loserville. All it is you can navigate to another movie or something while you're watching a movie on the screen. So. Right. That's not like big deal. I want true second screen related content where I can look up IMDb and find out more information about the movie or go to a YouTube or something or hear something from the director talking about how they shot the scene. I want to have that kind of second screen experience. And I expect that that's going to start happening, but it's just been a real dud this year.
Another thing I think about second screen is turning TV events, which themselves may be going the way of the dinosaur, but certainly not with sporting events, for example, the Super Bowl or whatever, or premieres of new seasons of television shows, even though, again, that may be sort of on its way out. But for those things that are live, big events, I've always thought the second screen experience, having a tablet in your lap, would be useful for sharing the experience with friends and family who aren't physically in the room.
Well, and there is actually, though, it's not actually a second screen experience. And let me explain what I mean. What I mean is a true second screen experience is going to be something that it's a Samsung TV and it's a Samsung app that talks to each other and knows exactly what you're watching and everything. The second screen experiences I've seen for something like the Oscars or the Olympics and things like that, those have been secondary apps where you can talk about what you're seeing or get more information and everything, but it really doesn't relate to either the media streamer or the smart TV like its promises. One of the coolest things I saw in second screen was, well, I guess it wasn't really second screen, was the Xbox and the ability to answer polls and give your opinion during the debates and things.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Oh, that's interesting.
Jeff, what have been the big failures in your view?
Two things come to mind, TVs and tablets. On the TV side, we saw kind of a stagnation at best, and in some cases a few steps back in terms of picture quality from most of the major TV companies. Panasonic is a notable exception. Their TVs this year kind of knocked it out of the park, but a lot of the Samsung TVs were kind of roughly the same. But we were talking about LG earlier, and kind of the reviews of those were saying kind of the same thing. And I hate to think that we've reached a plateau where the companies are just trying to make them cheaper and not better anymore. But I guess we'll kind of see over the next cycle to see if they've gotten better again. And then in terms of tablets, there are all these tablets that keep coming out, and I've been covering them, a fair amount. And I guess not really a disappointment. I just think that they're all failures in that, to me, the most important thing on a tablet is what kind of content you can get on it. I want to be able to download a movie or a TV show to the tablet and watch it on an airplane or in a car or wherever. And the only tablets you can do that with is the iPad and the Kindle Fire. The Google tablets and all these and all the Android tablets. Yeah, you have access to Google Play, but Google Play is horrifically worse than iTunes or Amazon. I mean, the amount of content available on Google Play is paltry in comparison to the iPad and the Fire. So in my mind, all of these tablets are kind of also-rans. Like, why would you waste money on getting a tablet that doesn't have access to all of this content when in reality everything else is basically the same? I mean, it's the same screen size, battery life, and processing. I mean, all of these things are effectively the same thing, yet these other tablets don't have content. So the fact that that isn't a bigger deal to me is just surprising and disappointing that all these companies are like, oh, look, a tablet, we make a tablet. I'm like, yeah, but it's stupid. You know?
Yeah, but why hold back? Tell us what you really think.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, listen, before we go on, before we end the show, which is going to come up here before too long, I do want to take a moment to thank our sponsor for this episode, which is Netflix. As always, I thank Netflix very much for their support of the show. And, we've been talking about streaming here on this particular episode, and rightly so. Certainly one of the technologies that is becoming more and more important, as we are talking about, is streaming content to your devices, be they tablets or cell phones or smartphones or TVs or computers, and Netflix streams to them all. They all have apps that let you access the incredibly large library of Netflix streaming content. Thousands of TV episodes and movies available to you as much as you can consume for one low monthly fee. You can even start on one device and finish on another, which makes it the ultimate inconvenience beyond even just getting what you want when you want. Now, those few of you who might not have tried Netflix yet can try it for 30 days for free. Just go to netflix.com/twit. Be sure to use that URL, netflix.com/twit. And again, I thank Netflix very much for its support of Home Theater Geeks and the entire TWiT network. So,
they just made an announcement about with Disney, right?
Yes.
Was it some big thing with like Pixar movies and everything, right?
Ooh, Barb, tell us about it.
Well, it is really exciting, and actually, gosh, there's just so much exciting about this. Well, number one is that in 2016, which seems like a long time away, but in 2016.
But it's really not.
But remember, it was just yesterday we were at CES, so it'll be fast.
Exactly.
But in 2016, all of the movies that are released by Pixar and Marvel and Disney and all of the Walt Disney Company will be available about 8 months after they're in the theater directly to Netflix before it will go to cable or anybody else. It'll be exclusively to Netflix. So that's cool. Number one. And the other thing that's pretty cool is anybody who's got a little kid knows how Sleeping Beauty and Lion King and all of those different DVDs are released for 8 months or something, and then they're pulled back and not released again for 6 years or whatever.
Right.
You can right now get Sleeping Beauty, the Alice in Wonderland, Lion King, and I think Pocahontas and a few others. They're available now. Easiest to find if you go to the Netflix Kids portion. You know how they now have Netflix and Netflix Kids.
Right.
If you go to the Netflix Kids portion, you can find them right away. So all those really high-end video animation is all available, and that was one deal. And then the other deal, like I said, is the exclusivity, which is really huge for the whole idea of streaming to bypass the whole cable and satellite venue.
Mm-hmm.
I think even more exciting than that, I have to say, just because I'm a huge fan, is the fact that they are going to be broadcasting Arrested Development episodes, new Arrested Development episodes.
Netflix, you mean?
Yeah. That's
cool.
Amazing.
I must admit, I'm not a fan of that show. It's too neurotic
show again,
to me.
Scott. In fact, I'm leaving right now. That's it. I'm out.
No, wait, no, don't. I'm sorry. Okay, well, hey, it's a popular show. A lot of people like it. So the fact that they're showing it current or very nearly current episodes right away.
All new episodes. They're actually they're pulling an HBO. They are.
Oh, I got you.
All new episodes of a show that was canceled by the evil Fox network. Now, if only they do the same thing with Firefly, we'd be all set.
We would be all set. That I would support. And that brings up another interesting point, which is that companies like Netflix, streaming companies that normally just provide the content made by somebody else, are now starting to make their own content. I can't think of who it was. I just heard this the other day. Any of you remember? Was Hulu or Netflix or somebody was actually creating new content?
Well, it might have been this. It might have been this deal with, and there actually, you know what? I know you say that makes me think that there was somebody else that had just come out with it. But it almost seems like they're going the same route as AMC and a lot of these secondary or smaller cable networks are realizing that new content is really the way to get more viewers, and more revenue.
We're all old magazine jockeys, I know.
Yeah, exactly. So I think they're seeing that the success that a lot of these networks are having, like AMC with The Walking Dead, that if you find it, or Mad Men, if you find a niche, if you do programming that maybe wouldn't have the volume of viewership on a major network to be able to support their massive overhead on a smaller network, it'll find an audience and do very, very well, a bigger piece of a smaller pie, as they say.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, the chat room is coming through like the champs that they are, pointing out that what I'm thinking of is House of Cards with Kevin Spacey on Netflix, which is going to be a political thriller. Which I'm looking forward to very much. I really want to see that. I think it looks very good, and I like Kevin Spacey. And also Knox Harrington is pointing out that Lilyhammer was the first original show that Netflix did. I didn't watch that. Did any of you?
Nope.
Mm-mm.
Nope. Stoned silence.
That didn't look interesting to me. It wasn't a question of, the subject matter didn't look interesting to me.
Yeah, it didn't to me either. But House of Cards does.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely going to check that out. Well, okay, we've got a few minutes left. Robert, what else would you like to reminisce about?
The end of DLP TV.
Oh, very good. Absolutely. I mean, not very good at the end of DLP TV, but I'm glad you brought it up.
I just keep trying to remember. Yeah, I got to talk about it. Yeah, it's just after all this time, well, of course, Mitsubishi was the last player in the game, but no more rear projection TV. It's the end of an era, And what's odd about this whole thing is, sure, they're a little bit more bulkier, but when you think about it, DLP TV provides the largest screen size for the absolute lowest price. I mean, I was seeing Black Friday ads for a 2D Mitsubishi 73-inch for like $999.
$1,000 for a 73-inch TV.
Right. Right.
That's a really important point. And I think, it is the end of an era. We had rear projection TVs all over the place. And then slowly everybody got out of the business, and Mitsubishi was the last holdout, and they've even stopped doing their laser view TV.
Right.
Jeff, did anybody here ever review a laser view? I didn't.
I don't think anyone did. I don't think they gave them out for review. I mean, it was a neat idea, and I certainly could see the benefits of some of it. But the problem is, and I hate to say this because I like DLP. I mean, I review a lot of projectors, so I see a fair amount of DLP. But when it comes down to it, is that the contrast ratio on a DLP is not as good as LCOS. And actually, even with modern LCD, at least with projectors. So it certainly kind of reached an upper limit and didn't advance past that. So even with laser, the dynamic contrast ratio was probably really good because you could ramp up that laser very quickly. But in terms of actual on-screen contrast, it was limited by the DLP. So, but that still was good and better than a lot of LCDs out there. So I agree with you guys that I lament the loss of this interesting alternative. But I think a lot of people, even if you said to them, look, you're never going to mount the TV, the depth doesn't matter, I still think, and obviously the numbers show that people still looked at it and goes, yeah, but I just want a flat panel.
Yeah, but and yet it is a kind of an important event because rear projection TVs have been around for, I don't know what, 15 years anyway? 10 years.
Way more than that.
Way longer than that.
Much longer than that, like 20 years.
20 years, yeah.
Go back to the old Nova Beam.
Well,
Definitely 95 for sure.
Oh, I think
that's
I
front
got
projection.
even earlier than that, I would imagine. I remember seeing a rear pro in somebody's house growing up, and that must have been the 80s, I guess. I mean, it's certainly different from what's out there now. But,
Sure.
but yeah, even when I worked at Circuit City back in the 90s, there were still plenty of them there.
Yeah.
When I first started working at home theater over 10 years ago, we did big TV face-offs, me and Mike Wood. And, of course, me being the lackey, I had to unbox these god-awful CRT TVs that weighed 1,000 pounds. And I don't miss that at all.
Well, Nikki in the chat room is asking, with 1080p came improvements in color, contrast, etc. Do we think that 4K will only improve resolution or other attributes?
There's talk of other attributes. There is talk about doing better color and certain other perhaps esoteric advances in terms of picture quality. But if that would be a massive lost opportunity if there isn't that as well. We went to Rec 709, I think, with HD, and that was a
correct
improvement. And so it would be doing a more color, possibly better bit depth. These would be all, I think, better improvements than just a strictly the increase in resolution.
Robert, what do you got to say about that?
I was going to pretty much say the same thing, is that they're promising more than just the resolution. And I think that would really be a good idea, because it would add more value. I mean, sure, you got more detail, but what else do you have? Because even when I write to my readers, people are saying, oh, can a 720p look as good as a 1080p TV and everything? And there's more to the TV than just resolution. There is the color processing, the scaling, and all that stuff as well. So if they're like in a 4K TV, if they don't have good scaling for 1080p up conversion, that can be a factor too, especially when you blow up the screen so large.
A big factor. I've heard tell that that color will still be 8-bit and still be encoded in a compression technically known as 420. I won't go into what that means exactly, just that it
I would
really
love to hear you try to explain that, though.
Well, we're just about out of time here, folks. Thank you so much. Really? All right. You want to hear it? I'll hear it. You can hear it.
No, it's okay.
That sounds like another show.
It is another show. That's a whole show in and of itself. Yeah. It's suffice for now to say it's a form of compression. It's a form of data reduction so that not as much data gets transmitted. And those three numbers refer to the brightness information and two what are called color difference channels. And the 0 means there's no information in that color difference channel, and it's somehow reconstructed at the opposite end when you decode the whole thing.
Oh, boy.
And what would be great would be if 4K had 10-bit color, which is 2 more bits than 8-bit, which means a greater, smaller gradations in color, and 422, which gives you more information coming down the pipe, and less decoding magic you have to do at the other end. But I've heard that neither of those things are going to be true of 4K standard. Speaking of 4K, we'll end with this. 4K delivery. Okay, we talked earlier about content, right? There's not that much content. Sony is providing a media server with their 4K flat panel. Red is taking pre-orders for their 4K hard disk server, which is only going to be $1,500, which is pretty amazing. But a lot of people ask me about 4K broadcasting, 4K streaming. Do we think either of those is going to happen anytime soon? Barb, what do you think?
Well, if you're talking about 4K streaming, it's bad enough to do a 1080p with not too much compression and still stay under your limits for the month. I can imagine what a 4K is going to do for you.
Exactly.
It'll be so compressed, and you'll have to raise your limits or pay a ton of extra money in overages. So I think it'll be a little while before that happens.
Yeah. Jeff, what do you think?
Well, on most of my 4K articles on CNET, there has been a very interesting troll that has been commenting on all of them, and he finally emailed me separately to kind of explain who he was, and he says he works for a company that is working on doing 4K streaming, and it's certainly possible, but like you said, we're not really even getting 1080p streaming. Most of it's 720.
That's right.
So I think either download or possibly some sort of streaming is going to be the most likely way that we're going to get 4K. Broadcast just doesn't seem like, unless there's a huge advancement in compression techniques, broadcast, there's not enough bandwidth there, and very few people get their TV over the air anyway. And I don't think there's going to be any discs. I think Blu-ray is going to be the last disc format that we have, and I think whatever we get after this is going to be just download or streaming, or who knows, magic through pixie dust. I don't know, but it's certainly not going to be a disc format. I think that's all gone.
I totally agree.
Yeah, yep. Robert, what do you think? Disc formats, Blu-ray's the end of the line here?
Well, technically, Blu-ray can accommodate 4K, but it would be another thing. You'd need new players, because it'd be a new compression thing and everything. So I think the disc thing is out. I think the hard drive servers that Sony and Red are doing, I think that's going to be it. And you're probably going to get your movies on flash drives or download them overnight,
right?
Or
exactly.
Something like that.
It might not take that long. It might not take that long to download them, and depending on your connection, and certainly with something like if you have one of the better high-speed internet connections like Fios or a lot of the Uverse things, or even some cable, downloading them might not take too long. I mean, it's certainly not something you're gonna, not like Netflix where you can just start it and it's there. But maybe after an hour or something, there's enough buffer that you could maybe start watching it. Who knows? There's actually going to be an announcement tomorrow on a company that's coming out with some interesting downloading options that we'll see. It's certainly not talking about 4K, but you could see the path from what they're talking about to a 4K potential download.
What company is that?
Not for another 6 hours, I can't tell you.
No.
Also, too, it all brings up the whole concept of are you going to be able to own a 4K movie because of the licensing and all that? How the content delivery, if it's not going to be a disc format, you're probably never going to be able to own a 4K movie.
Well,
yeah, you could put it in the movie theater.
Yeah, right. Oh man.
I'm just talking about the licensing and downloading and who can change the rights.
It was done with 1080p and with DVD. It was the same argument, and the pushback from the public saying, no, I want to be able to watch it anywhere I want, or at least be able to have it. I think there are going to be. My guess is there's going to be ways around that where they're going to say, okay, well, if you lose it, you can download it again. And if you want to watch it on your tablet, well, here's the ultraviolet version that's only 1080p or only 720p. And you can watch it there. And but I agree with you. I think the era of here's your movie and you can lend it to your friends or resell it or whatever, I wouldn't be surprised if that at least changes, if not disappears.
I think you might be right. I mean, I know plenty of purists and audiophile types who would bemoan the loss of the physical medium for sure, because I think you would all agree that streaming, doesn't have the same quality as Blu-ray.
No. It's close. It's getting there.
Streaming doesn't, but download can.
Yeah. True enough. Well, we've come to the end of a fascinating hour looking back and a little bit of looking forward. I want to thank you all for being here very much. A great time was had by all. Jeff Morrison from CNET, Sound and Vision, and elsewhere, thank you.
Yep, thank you, Scott.
And Barb Gonzalez, the Simple Tech Guru from hometheater.com. And what was that other website?
techgoesstrong.com.
techgoesstrong.com. Go there and check out her stuff. And Robert Silva from about.com, hometheater.about.com. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much, Scott. And it's good to see everybody, Barb and Jeff and Scott. I'll probably see you all at CES.
Yes, I will.
That's right.
We will see you at CES. Speaking of which, this is the last show of the year for Home Theater Geeks. The next show will be aired on January 7th. We're actually going to pre-record it on January 4th. And it will be a different panel of journalists talking about what we expect to see at CES. We've all been inundated with press releases, so there is some idea of what we can expect. And I'm sure there'll be some surprises once we get there. And then the following week, I will be at CES, as we all will. And I will be doing Home Theater Geeks from the show, recording interviews at various booths on the show floor and showing you what we are seeing there at the show. So I hope you all have a wonderful and happy, healthy New Year. And until next time, geek out.